Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I'm Diane Emery Delgado. I'm a poet and the literary director here of the Poetry Center here at the UA. And I'm beyond honored to host and present a co-reading with poets Marcelo Hernandez Castillo and Marwa Helal tonight as part of our Art for Justice initiative and Morgan Lucas Schuldt memorial reading. I want to also thank our introducers tonight for their gift of generosity. Gracias to Farid Matuk, UA Associate Professor and Poet, who will introduce Marwa Helal, and Marla Franco, Assistant Vice Provost of our Hispanic Serving Institution Initiatives, who will introduce Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. I also want to give a very big shout out to the Poetry Center team who make all of these readings possible. So thanks to everyone, introducers, poets, Poetry Center team. Briefly, I just want to share a few notes about tonight's reading. This night's Art for Justice presentation is part of a 3-year grant-funded project that commissions new work from leading writers to explore the relationship between poetry and the crisis of mass incarceration in our country in the hope of creating a new kind of thinking with different possibilities. More about also the Morgan Lucas Schuldt memorial reading can be found online, but this reading is meant to feature emerging and innovative poets. This reading is presented annually as part of the Poetry Center's reading and lecture series and is named after poet and publisher Morgan Lucas Schuldt. And you could read more about these two initiatives on the Poetry Center's website. Before we begin tonight's program, I want to share 2 reminders. I want to remind everyone that we have books for sale. So please don't forget to support not only the poets, but also our efforts to make sure that we have books here for you to purchase. And I also want to share that our next reading will be occurring on Thursday, April 7th, and will feature poet Donica Kelly as part of our reading and lecture series. Thanks to everyone for being here. I'd like to now invite Marla Franco up to help us introduce Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. Let's please give a warm welcome to Marla, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to the Poetry Center for really hosting an amazing evening. I had the opportunity to dine with some of our faculty as well as our guest here. And, you know, it's a real testament, I think, to really an equity lens in which they approach their work. And you see it to be such a vibrant commitment, even in who they select and pull into the Poetry Center. And for that, I am utterly, completely grateful. To see HSI initiatives be a reality in all places of our campus community really is what we want to see the work happen and do. So I'm forever grateful for the Poetry Center and the role that they play in advancing our efforts to center the concept of servingness in practice. So once again, my name is Marla Franco, and I serve as the Assistant Vice Provost for Hispanic Serving Institution Initiatives here at the University of Arizona. I myself am a first-generation college graduate. I am also the great-granddaughter of farm workers in the Central Valley of California. That is who I come from, and that also is at the forefront of how I lead here at the University of Arizona. The University of Arizona became a federally designated Hispanic serving institution in 2018. And although the qualifier for that designation rests solely on our enrollment of at least 25% Hispanic students, the U of A has taken on an approach that far exceeds and challenges those expectations. We seek to bring that designation to life in ways that honor the lived experiences of our increasingly diverse students and employees, some of which likely share in the vivid realities that our guest authors present in their writing. I don't know how it's possible to have both so much to say and to be rendered speechless by the writings of Marcelo Hernandez Castillo. He is the author of the award-winning poetry collections Cenzontle and Dulce, and wrote one of the most moving and riveting memoirs that I've ever read, Children of the Land. I've been carrying around these books for about the past 2 weeks, really sifting through them every moment that I get. Marcelo, your writing is intricate, vulnerable, vivid, and incredibly insightful. As a reader, I almost feel unfit to have been gifted the opportunity to be an insider to your world and that of your families. Thank you. Without further ado.
You can take my mug up here. Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I was incredibly touched and moved and touched by everybody's presence here, for having me to the center, Diana, for the resources, the space to be able to think through these poems, to be able to continue work in all of its myriad ways, right? Work takes on different actions, and this is one of them. This is one of them that is at the forefront, but one of them nonetheless. I'm going to read some of the poems that I've been working on over the last year for this project, from the Marshall Project, and I am thinking of how I have come to them. I do a lot of education for incarcerated youth, teaching poetry exercises, poetry workshops for juvenile detention facilities. And the poems I'm going to be reading today, they're two sequenced poems on how to approach this pain through writing. I'm going to be showing a video, and it's a video text in which the video says things that I cannot say yet, have not brought myself to yet, but they're still in the ether. They're still in my head. I just don't know how to put them there. And I felt like I couldn't leave them behind. So I have two versions of it. One is the video, and then one is the text, which I'll read after the video. And I'm thinking, of which ones are facts and which ones are stories. And one of the precepts of this project is, activists have the statistics, they have the facts, but they need the stories. And so are we as poets producing the stories? Can we produce the stories? And can we approach that angle of the larger advocacy work to fill in that gaps that is needed? And so for me, I was thinking of, facts and stories. Which one is held longer in the imagination? Which one makes you move your hand, or which one makes you put one foot in front of another? I'm not going to be reading in order. Every time I read this poem, which so far has only been twice, this is the second time. I tried it out in this smaller reading that I had not too long ago, just to kind of like test the waters. But every time that I will be reading it, it's going to be a new project. It's going to be a new object, and it's going to move differently depending on the space, depending on the people, depending on my whims. And I'm thinking about the fact that things move differently for people in detention. My mother, a couple of years ago, was in detention as she was seeking for asylum, and I'm thinking of time and the people in my life who are in detention now. That in these poems, where are we going and what is stagnant? Things go fast, and you'll see from the video, things go fast, things happen fast, too fast to allow you to make change, to adapt, but also things go slow, and what I'm thinking of is this slowing down so that words appear for longer instances than they would in a normal reading. They would replace the idea of repetition with repetition of presence. Um, so, yeah, I think that's a lot of it had to do with some software that I had to find. And so a lot of it is just about complicity. How am I complicit in this? Yeah, having to navigate, for those of you who haven't had to navigate the immigration system, you have to be at full attention 100% of the time, and you can't miss one piece of mail, because that piece of mail, if you didn't get it, can cause disaster, which is the reason why I didn't get my green card when I did, because the mail delivery, like mail carrier, decided that that day there was some traffic cones around my mailbox. So they said, I'll bring it back later. And of course, that's mail that if it goes back to the post office, it gets sent back to center. So yeah, things as simple as that. The hypervigilance, if you're not focused intensely, it can cost you. And so, yeah, I think that's all I'll say. This poem separates the poetry, the poem, and the poetics. So if you could play that. 3 times the speed, if you can. Thanks. And this is a translation of whatever subliminal messages you got from that. And it's up there so that you can see in what ways I approach it. A language necessary for anger, but not retaliation. Taught the great quotes of tenderness like please and marrow and please, some less, some more. Never used. I understand. I understand so much. Little brother, little iota, my ode to plants, my obelisk, the trouble with touching. Never used. Unnamed, detained minor. Quote, I am a field, the me I knew in the myth of one life. And I can't name that minor, but that was a minor who I taught. Little self-built dreams, little money, big stacks, little fruit, big light, little stone, little one, its doubt and iridescence. State personnel says, keep it all. State personnel redacts subsequent statements. Trafficking in temporary consequence. Bewilderment, remedy, burn. Because the grant money will be over soon, it will be difficult to imagine your freedom. I am qualified to talk about this. Trust me, I'm a specialist. My day apportioned to critical thinking. My imagination is monastic, riddled and tame, a most acute symphony. You can go to the next page. And the limits imposed on the imagination, the accretion of economic prosperity, lie about everything. The quantitative data presents the greatest form of knowledge and vehicle of rhetorical argument in the defense of your effective humanity. Unnamed detained minor, quote, no, not at the moment. I could just, spur an end. Why? Spiritual loom. I can be resumed. Must repeat the suffering to preserve the suffering. A way to keep the idea without the parts that hurt. A noteworthy and pristine illusion and such. In the aftermath of required turpitude, festooned lyric, and pristine consequence and such. 34,000 immigrant detention bed mandate, expected to be filled at all times. Greater than or equal to a day, dimensions 40.5 by 57 by 84.5. Dickinson said, to make a prairie, it takes one clover and one bee. One clover, one bee. And reverie. It's okay, I voted for Biden. Not an inconvenience, not an ethnography, not a testimony, not a redemption story, not an epiphany, not a laundry list, not a proof to a theorem, a circus of inordinate objects. You are valued for your productivity. There's a landscape, and you're in the middle of it, maybe drinking wine, maybe reading a book. The committee declares what you are holding is less important than that you are there. Unnamed detained minor, workshop prompt, quote, from a workshop prompt, quote, let me break the black sky to witness. By our most conservative estimates, states could release at least 13,500 more youth today without great risk to public safety from calculated threat assessment. Conditioned to think of bodies in prison, not people in prison, or to reclaim collateral damage. Priority, language from congressional hearing. To process detainees as quickly as possible, a new detainee is charged at a higher rate than one who has been in the system for longer than a year. New detainees still have motions to present, forms to sign, people to call. Panic costs more money. Long-term detainees are no longer factored into the Appropriation Committee's agenda for the fiscal year. Somewhere it says forever and forever. I future your grief. I plant the seed and prosper, in which the word cage is replaced with splendor. To be eligible, to be legible, as in author-saturated texts and author-evacuated texts, methods that reduce anxieties and enable efficiency. 1, the correlation between detainee phone calls and the jobs held by their mothers. 2, the correlation between out-of-stock care package items and their sodium concentration. 3, the correlation between suicides and distance from home. How lonely your splendor. The rhyme between splendor and rage, a small anger and a large splendor. No luster quite so eponymous, no pageantry that can outlive us. In a mass surveillance state, we are all internet stars. I look dutifully for your wound. My mother wore a GPS ankle bracelet as a condition of her release. GPS ankle monitors establish patterns of movement, length, and frequency of travel to determine punishment for departure from the mean. 30% expanded definition of solitude, and let us not forgive any of it. 40% interrogation and its limits of ascension. 30%, the committee declares a center to your abatement, pressed by and by. Beauty, proper, and minor. The private for-profit corrections company, GEO Group, is publicly listed as a real estate investment trust, which has rewritten into congressional record the corporate definition of land and ownership. Due to circumstance of things relating to distance and removal and access and interest, beyond what words mean anyways, the minor aesthete or the longest road. I am working on getting my kids home. None of this is in my own words. I have not spoken yet, but I'm looking. Nonetheless, the wreckage, the committee declares a trembling, the unbroken vessel of September. Toward a text that contains no solace. Let it live in its own isolation, in its own idea of isolation. Let no image be spared in our terrible imagination of it. Risk assessment prediction software determines bail and, or in some cases, parole. This algorithm assesses the likelihood of flight risk or repeat offense. It was morning when ICE raided my brother's home and detained him. He is studying computer science to design more effective tracking algorithms for Twitter. CAP, Criminal Alien Program, has collapsed the avenues of jurisdiction between immigration enforcement and criminal enforcement. Quantifiable change that can be documented, measured, funded, to prove, to promise. Keep the minor. Hashtag abolish ICE. Hashtag families belong together. Hashtag ACAB. Hashtag two households. Hashtag both alike in dignity. Hashtag in fair Verona. their alternate forms of citizenship. Plato said, the interviewer asks about bridges. Poetry is stupid and I want to die. Per conditions of release, my father is required to answer a call every third Sunday of the month at exactly 8 a.m. and speak his name into the AI voice detection software, which has categorized every nuanced morpheme and decibel calibration of his name. If his utterance does not match, an agent will be in touch shortly. My father answers and says his name slowly, as if it's not his. I Googled all prisons in California, and Google suggests if I'm looking for best federal prisons in California, 4 out of 5 stars. Googled the word wrapped and felt a sigh of relief to see that it was actually a word and that I had actually used it correctly. In which the word, in the absence of its bewilderment, stripe after unforgiving stripe, how in one hand the film, in the other the remedy and its derelict vision, a nearby future. As if the shape denies its circumstance, we watch everything burn as it should. It burns as it should, a trembling, an easy way home. Detained, minor 2, field notes. I wish you could bring better books. Shoot out like Big Jack. It's a robbery, it's taxes, it's a story. Redacted. In anticipation of your spectral victimhood. 1 clover, 1 bee, and reverie. You can come. So that was a long poem about 3 things that I couldn't do without: the poem, the poetics, and the poetry. I can give a lecture on that, but I won't. I'm going to read this sequence here. It's shorter than the other one, but basically, I had to approach prisons that were on occupied, stolen indigenous land, which all of them are, and thinking of how I even walk up to one and how to engage with the landscape and the environment around which prisons are built. You know, how prisons are usually in remote places because of we don't want to see them. We don't want to see them because we don't want to face the inhumanity with which we are complicit. So they usually, in California at least, they put them way out in the middle of nowhere, which also makes it more difficult for people to visit their family, their loved ones. And so in places where the prison is in the center of town, there's these things called like prison chic, which aestheticize and romanticize. And particularly the prison that's closest to me, where my brother-in-law is held. He's serving life in Folsom Prison. Is made famous because of Johnny Cash and Johnny Cash's visit to the prison, Folsom Prison Blues. And so it's a very wealthy, affluent community with a bike trail that goes around the prison. And the prison itself is hidden in the architecture of the landscape around it, with the Folsom Dam there. But nonetheless, the bridges take on this prison chic of like being built by the same stones that the prison was built, and like guard towers and turrets, decorative guard towers and turrets. And so you have these kinds of almost like Alcatraz kind of tourism with widely funded public art and expensive road bikes. You know, so this is kind of where that poem comes from, and documenting the plants that are outside of the prison on that trail and their curative properties, as a way of thinking how people heal even, how do they heal when healing is just out of reach? You know, how to heal with language and weeds, and the myths of these plants that are so close to us, the redbud and the dogwood in specific. It's called Eclog, a field guide and cure. Walking 7 miles around Folsom Prison, my job, for it is a job, is to document plants and log their curative properties. Sweet fennel, black locust, yerba santa, doveweed, chaparral broom, eastern redbud, sweet gum. A schemata. If maps minus borders equals debt, then what could they have healed for whom there is no healing? There's a lot of curative properties like carminative, galactagogue, properties of plants. I am required to tell you I have a cousin serving life without parole in Folsom Prison. In your imagination of his crime, for you have already imagined it, there must be a gold bell. It behooves you to imagine it ring and the rain that follows. It rained and we did nothing about it. The court said there is no further explanation needed. His time and his nails like blue division, as in departing from a common source, a house inside another house. And so we arrive. Tragedy plus time equals comedy. 6 hummingbirds nailed to a wall. The prison museum named the big house in bold italics. My brother remodeled this prison kitchen, pots as big as a bath bolted to the floor, biggest he'd ever seen, ungodly heavy. I went to school where the football stadium, not unlike this football stadium, was also called the big house and where people screamed and screamed. If comedy minus time equals tragedy, then there is shame here, but not how you imagine it. Black sunflower seeds evenly placed on the table, the sound of them opening and closing. Now, unlike those I saw on the trail, how ungodly large and heavy the redbud and dogwood were in biblical times. The dogwood used to crucify the Son of God, the redbud used by his traitor Judas to hang himself in shame. Thenceforth, both trees in their unique guilt never again grew large enough to hold a body. Their branches thenceforth too thin to ever hang from, and their petals no longer white, but red in spring. Thenceforth named the Judas tree, ungodly beautiful. Mile after mile, febrifuge, black locust for fever, eaten for the tumors that grow in whatever empty space is left in your body. Emetic, analgesic to move the pain in your mouth in circles until it feels like stirring a large pot of warm broth in winter. If wealth plus comedy is greater than or equal to madness, then you are lovely in the eyes of the state. Gumbush, California yerba santa, the lips of the hanged Judas, unable again to defile with a kiss the most holy. You can make a tincture and tea from their bark to stimulate the respiratory system. It treats chronic asthma not just for a poem person, but a person. If breath minus time is less than or equal to tragedy, then my job is to imagine a crime absolved of these oils of the sweet gum, emmenagogue, carminative, anointed. The court recommends an explanation. So be it. This manicured trail, named after Johnny Cash's famous visit, has polite cyclists on expensive bikes and public art. A cold infusion for the common flu and congestion. Mile after ungodly mile, white flowers, red flowers, some kind of peppermint. Consumptive weed ingested to terminate pregnancy. Its very same feathery seeds at one time used to stuff baby toys. Henceforth, each mile through the town center's prison aesthetic, bridges designed with decorative guard towers, rusted grates, and hedge walls lined with the same quarried stones used to build the prison. A rustic panopticon charm. If tragedy plus repetition is greater than permanence over tragedy, then, of course, they were wildly capable. Febrifuge, analgesic, the scent of almonds. Dear cousin, this is the closest I can and have ever come. Nearby, antique shops sell the collateral damage of outdated restraints long after they've outlived their usefulness and practice. Use, as in use this for that. The restorative power of your life set to a score. Both a purge and hunger to know your best self in your best starched shirt, in your best iron pants. Lemon-scented gum to keep the mosquitoes away. More shiny bicycle thank yous. Henceforth, cheers from the inmates, cheers from the guards holding Mary Magdalene, cheers and screaming and more screaming. Unknown variable, plus or minus beauty. Standard deviation, plus or minus 2. Even though Folsom Lake has dried up, this is the last section. Even though Folsom Lake has dried up, the beachside homes have firmly maintained their value. More cheers. More lemon-scented gum, the blood and blood you gave, which made way for a bewildering path I could never follow. The last adjacent mile to you, dear cousin. The last bird thrumming like a nervous finger. More cheers, deranged by the absence of cardinal points. Useless instruments. Stamens. We lose and loosen direction on good white legal paper. Dear cousin, dear son, idle brother, your blue opera swimming downriver, your greatest good of that bronze redemption of Christ. I document the oldest tree in existence. I run into a bellflower. I run into a field and clamor of bells. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcelo. I feel like you've already sanctified the space, seriously, in poetry, which is all I ever want. My name is Farid Matouk, and it's my great honor to introduce Marwa Helal tonight. I've been watching videos of talks by abolitionist scholar Joy James, and she's got me thinking about agape. It's a word that helps us mark a different kind of love, where eros is romantic, where filial is sisterly. Agape is supposed to be transcendent. Agape, we are told, is realized in God's sacrifice of a child for the world, and agape is realized in that child's faithful answer to the sacrificial call. It's a confounding story, Christianity, which is maybe why it engenders so many misreadings. Its mistaken premise is a singular God, and its pathos is misplaced in the preciousness of a singular son. The preciousness of a singular son is a given to a patriarchy where the power to engender and hoard property through generations is situated in a collaboration between the penis and the family name, between the phallus and the signature, and where the state reveals its purpose not in facilitating liberty, but in co-signing patriarchal accumulation with its violence. Sometimes the theme is too buried under the armature of the plot. Sometimes the culture clings too heavy on the transcending spirit. Refusing to atomize the field of existence into self and other, agape transcends the mortal, singular self. And agape doesn't convey the lover to a heavenly elsewhere. Alive or dead, agape returns the lover, agape brings the lover back. As Marwa Helal quotes from Kalthum's song, to the one I saw before I saw, and to the body before the body worries. Joy James finds agape realized in the actions of anti-imperial rebels, disciplining their lives to a strategy of confrontation with the violence of the state. These rebels have already transcended singularity and returned to a love so vast and so raw that only the antibody can bear it. That's the title of Marwa's new book, the portal we've come here to approach, the crochet hook onto which we can hope to be wound. Ante, A-N-T-E, as in before. The body before it was promoted, only after much professional development, to the rank of a singular self. The body before it was awarded, only after sifting through unprecedented numbers of worthy candidates with the honor of everyday American loneliness. If the rebel refuses these honors, the state can try to absent the rebel, can try to pluck them out of the vast antibody of the people and isolate them in a clandestine prison. But Joy James says it's already too late. The sacrifice has been made, the example has been set, the fact of transcendent love for the collective is already understood. So this isn't a sermon or a lecture, it's an introduction. But am I to read you a list of accolades? Are we that committed to the ritual of distinction? Analogous to the state, the foundations and award-granting bodies, the poetry academies and the poetry societies can try to honor the poet into a prison house of singular achievement. But the poet, especially this poet, who has reversed the very waters of English and made them run from right to left, this poet, who knows enough to say, give Caesar back what belongs to Caesar, this poet did not come to play at being distinguished. Marwa did not come to be plucked from the collective field, where poetry is a technology to braid body and word, self and other, music and meaning, present and past, at the double edge of body and breath. We do not introduce the poet. We make way for poetry so that we can join in its braiding. When Marwa writes, who real, who free, they are not distinguishing. They are not threshing the wheat from the chaff, the chosen from the unchosen. That's trifling religious shit. That's trifling empire shit. Return to Caesar what is Caesar's, but return the poet to poetry. When Marwa writes, who real, who free, it's the voice of agape that speaks its loving invitation and call. How are we going to answer? Please welcome Marwa Helal.
All right. Thank you all for being here. That introduction just thank you for getting it, you know? It's nice to be seen in that I'm a poet way, and it's so rare to be seen. And I know that that's a universal feeling as well. Marcelo, I'm so grateful for you and to read with you. And, you know, I do want the lecture. And I kind of want to transition to, if you're open to it, by asking the audience what 2 words they remember from the first poem, which was just, I mean, yeah, let's hear from you all. What are 2 words that you remember that stand out to you? Bombardment. Can I get another? B. What else? Kindergarten. Yeah. Anything else? Minor. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. I feel like the mood is to read from Antibody, but you know, actually, let me do the timer thing because I will get carried away. This is poem to be read from right to left. I learned my first language second. C. Native I am mistaken for everywhere I go. To sun and moon like the letter lamb. Sound like lamb, but think like fox. Reminds me of this recurring dream being chased in a circle, like duck, duck, goose. But there were no other children. I got tired of counting the number of English words it takes to capture one in another. Poem that wrote me into beast in order to be read. Samira and Aziza and Nabila Awatif and Adel, Isis and Mat, yes, Mat of the 42 laws and ideals we used to live by, you of white feather and commandment, who made us, taught us of stars and named them, named us, made newt and systems of irrigation, Nile, Delta, source inventors, of mead and kohl for drawing of lapis and woven cloth, harp, Sinai, Berber, pen and paper. We were winged creatures, weren't we? Tell me, because I still dream of flight. Sometimes I trumpet waiting to be sound, I who have made earrings of arrow, reporting now to you of the mythical creatures I dismantled in order to become the one writing words you are reading. Tarsal by metatarsal, I disjointed false to be true. Sometimes I am cell with eyes made up of 5-strand DNA, quintuple helix amoeba bond. I would claim you as my ancestors thrice, but once is honor. I am trying to be worthy, live to have learned so much that God made Arab to know what it is to be both black and Jew. To be Arab is to beast in order to be read. Like scripture, etched calligraphy, wood and metal, I ask you to marvel at poetry they tried to make us forget. In Guantanamo and all unnamed time, they will ask us of this time, come back again and again. While we were out, the world has become image we made in our own image, and this is what we hunt. Now I've caught my reflection between incisors, I, beast of no nation, who want only to be read. Excuse me, now it is time to be fed. We ate their gaze. Our gaze ate them. So this is the new book vibe. We're getting to know each other right now. Why I so wise? It wasn't so much a doubled consciousness, but more akin to a doubled gaze. I didn't leave my body when it would happen, but it was like I could see myself seeing them see me. And I must admit, I got a rise out of it. Their feelings of insecurity. They were so obviously intimidated by the work they knew they could never do and would never be able to make. This is how beasts are made. Kulsum sings to the one I saw before I saw, and the body before the body worries she will tear the veil. On the floor of a dimly lit gym's basketball court, I learned Pilates' method was born in a prisoner of war camp. Belong. 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 Respectability was the first form of erasure, which is to say, obliteration, not objectification. By the time we are adults, we have become edited versions of ourselves. To delete is to deny. My editor seems to have a typo in her name. She keeps insisting it is with a W, an emphasis on the W. The typo is the correction. I have stopped wondering how we will meet. It is easy to leave what is already gone. I know because I have left so much, or else it has left me. What is a man without patriarchy? Who decides if the sacrifice was worth it? The one being sacrificed for, or the one doing the sacrificing? Or is it the one being sacrificed? If so, how have you participated in your own objectification? This is an actor portrayal. Whispers in all the world's a stage. Even my outfits have become formulaic. Exposed minus unexposed equals some semblance of respectability. Immigration theory is the cousin of game theory, or grass is greener theory. May we each live to see our own death, our own imminent irrelevancy. I've lived to see many of my acquaintances become commodities, LLC. Do-si-do, do-si-day. The grass is synthetic. Do-re-mi. I grew like a Himalayan pine tree. I no longer watch the news. I used to be involved in making it, pulling B-roll from a decade ago to tell the same story today. My parents report it to me over the telephone. They say, today they saw a man fleeing Aleppo with a cat that looks like theirs perched on his shoulder. They say when it is our turn to flee, they will carry the cat in the same way. And I think it is easier to live destruction than to watch it. I live the consequences of that revelation. This is the part where we dream of a pacifist military. Huriel, the return of poem to be read from right to left. For when you are ready to follow a tendency of anonymous feathers, Zena El-Sus. Well, I say to no one in particular, this isn't the first time I've backed us out of a disaster. Record scratch. Nah, you ain't wondering how we got here. Freeze frame. And if it doesn't feel like an NDE, you probably ain't living right. And if you don't get that, this poem ain't for you. Now pan back to the scene, now that we've kicked the CIA, NSA, FBI out. Left hand on 12, right hand gripping the top of the passenger seat. Oh, I cantered out here, now I'm galloping back. I return, and you, dear reader, are tired of my saying I return. A man unbuckles his belt before entering security, and someone is aroused. This is our state. The first professor to see a shorter draft of this poem asks how long I could sustain this stylistic device. I counter with, I don't know, prof. How long do you think the white, heteronormative, demonic, hegemonic, mnemonic trademark can sustain itself? Now I'm American, and all the class clown and road rage I could never be. Besides, this is no device. LOL is palindrome. LOL. It took a whole global pandemic for you to institutionalize yourselves. LOL. It took bioterrorism for you to get training in anti-racism. LOL. It is why the unwell are well and the well are unwell under duress. It is 11:11. I am many miles, many thousand miles in the air, trying to make a poem without a sound. I wrote I grew tired of counting the number of English words it takes to capture one in another, but now I have grown tired of writing toward your inherent limitations. Compassion, yes, I have it. You woke up in Iraq. The dull among you still think that is a metaphor. Well, hello then, I am desert storm. I sit on your sill at dawn and watch the woke wake up. Ha ha, you thought the Sandman had a gender. I wipe the sleep out your eye. Breaking news, Iraq was never ever waiting on your cream cheese spreading charcoal infused BPA free ice cube democracy. I, invasive species, I antibody you in your own language. Look how we lighten language so we fly, like Tony taught Elmaz, who taught me. You were so caught up with my maker and model, you missed the glory of this flight. I, mythical creature, already gone so far in the future, I made my own country with only 2 citizenship questions. Who real? Who free? This, my hologram reading to you, 'cause writing a book showed me y'all can't read to save yourselves. Guess I had to write in Arabic to teach you English. Yo, Steph, I'm still pushing. Yeah, from Brooklyn. Did y'all invaders open those doors yet? I know you thought I would be all I'm humbled. I am grateful for that New York Times review. And how is that Iraq revision going for you? How is it going? How's that Iraq revision going for you? Are you still at the window clapping at 7, or was it 8 p.m.? No one ever needed your applause. We needed protection. Another question while we're at it, is the window bulletproof? I assassinate. This, a non-violent stick-up. Your bullets slow, mine fast as future timelines, where you still tried to end me. I infinite infinity, only I can unend me. This is what I read when you write. Bar, bar, bar. Look at how you reveal yourselves. Now, before you tell me how my anger is well justified, let me translate for you. Angry equals very, 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 very smart. Very smart. Angry equals can no longer afford to suffer fools, can no longer carry you. And I welcome you to join me. That's why all the white supremacists moved to North Carolina racing to reproduce themselves. Meanwhile, legend has it, when I was born, I named myself. Name mean those who refuse to surrender to injustice. And I am many, 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 many. I was wind, and they tried to make me language, tried to translate, tried to empire me. They can't catch this free. But this is my third appearance and the first time they have paid me. So say it with me. Gimme the loot. Gimme, 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 gimme. Don't mind me. I mean, don't mind me. I humbly donate these 50 peanuts back to the Academy of Elephants. I am my own royalties. My next book already tatted on this body. Yeah, they got Tuesdays with Maury. I got Thursdays with Charlene. Don't you see how we is we? Together picking the lock of history? Come, I want to show you something. Did you know Yayoi Kusama makes poems too? But that isn't what we're here to see. There, she's painting now. You might think those are just dots, but she's transforming every trauma. Now let's take a walk with me and my friend Takuma. He's telling me about his grandma and wants to know how to get published before the conversation takes a turn. He says Egyptians are only Black when it's convenient. And I don't say anything because I know where his Black ends and mine begins. It was his now wife in our senior seminar who tried to tell me Egypt isn't a part of Africa. I'm from the part of Egypt you never see. You can't fool me. Besides, I hate when we colonize ourselves, like y'all wasn't looking while they looted and whitewashed my country's history with one hand and moved the plantations with the other. Like you don't know why you love that 100 EGYPTIAN cotton so much. I'm still wondering why. It makes me so uncomfortable to tell the truth and stand up for myself. And then I remember, oh, it's because 99.9% of you taught me how to gaslight myself. My sister Uni calls to ask about a strange word used in a recent review of her book. She says denialism, and I hear denialism. Sonically unsound, but etymologically correct. I seek to annihilate everything that would attempt to annihilate me, the many of me. And we never have to lift a finger to annihilate. Your own mediocrity and lack of competence will be your end. 8/5/8/7/2020. I am alive and listening to capitalism's last scream. And how many days on Kawara say, I am alive? My anger has been recorded for your quality assurance in minor and major key. I was a hidden treasure and I wished to be known. I created creation so I could be known. Are we there yet at your progress? How they killing us, but TP still here, predator in chief. Benefit of the doubt, ha. That's hope by another name. Have I finally written the national narrative that makes it possible for you to reckon with me? That precog, post-verbal speak, did you get the extra transmission yet? The poet knows what's good, but has a hard time living it. Yeah, I came in riding high on a hot-blooded thoroughbred Trojan horse. It is Black or Arab, depending on whose house we rollin' in or on. Soon you will wake up in Palestine. You know why they put the children in cages? Because they know we can fly. Same reason why every passport got wings on it. That's why I don't like when they hold mine for too long. And the body is just an envelope. Must be why I keep having the same dream about forgetting the stamps. I grew in your condensation and your condescension. I cumulus, I circumference and radius you. I fractal, I delia, I donia, I abstract, I conceptual. My coming out story, no one. Absolutely no one in the art store employee. Hi, is there anything I can help you with? I was expecting that question the way I'm feeling up all these brushes. Employee, shocked expression. No, it's just that we're closing soon. I'm learning now about color, to blend instead of mute. You can clean your brush, but every bristle has the memory of pigment. Got 2 families, given and chosen. Our last name very long. This I will also translate for you. We who are blessed and highly favored. We whom you have yet to see. We who find each other. Thank you for letting me be. Now I call my niece. Say, knock, knock, bok, bok. What did the cow cat say? Moo yow. Ring, ring, calling from the matrix. Pick up the Arabophone. And oops, sorry to everyone who accused me of taking up queer space before this. I didn't know it was delimited. We love the poets, but shame the conditions. Our saving grace said, when they go low, we go high, because that's the way the Nile flow. Now I hear Jose say, oh, didn't realize that was gonna be loud. Now I hear Jose say, you wild for this one, I wild and wild. When you teach this poem, tell the kids I wrote it in avatar state. I astral, I last, no DNA test can qualify me, which is to say, you will never ever modern standardize me. Now I ask, who will survive in America? 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 Who's surviving in America? Who will survive in America? Who real? Who free? Who real? Who free? Who real? Who free? Who real? Who free? Who real? Who free?
Wow, thank you for that, both of you, Marcelo, Marwa. That was an amazing reading. I just want to share with everyone that we have books for sale, and if you wanted to purchase one, that Marwa and Marcelo will be signing them. Just want to thank everyone for coming out again to our readings, and to Marwa and Marcelo who traveled here. It's not easy to come out and travel at these times, so I just want to give them another just round of applause for being here with us. Thank you.